I'm going to do the UV1 snare head. And this is a head that is loved by one of the, in my opinion, greatest modern drummers, Lionel Lewis. I think he's fantastic. And if he uses this head, then I'm interested. And you're doing the calf tone?
Yeah, so again, slightly different group of drummers that prefer this. It's a little bit more specific in sound. Nate Smith, Carter McLean, they're big fans of this head. Carter especially, he's kind of one of the big knowledge brains of vintage drums, and this kind of works very well with a lot of his drum collection as well.
His YouTube channel's great as well.
It's brilliant.
Just check that
channel. So yeah, with batter heads, this is the final piece of the puzzle. So we've fitted the wires, we've got the wires and the snare side head up to tension. With the batter heads, dependent on the type of drum, the type of sound you want to get from the drum as well, this is kind of the critical point for selecting the right head for the job. So with the Yamaha snare, we've gone with the UV1. It's that bright and modern sound. And with the Pearl maple shell snare, inherently it's a little bit warmer in character. So that's why we've matched it up with the calf tone head. But we'll dive into the sounds that we can get out of these in a bit. What we really want to focus on right now is just getting the drum reassembled, and we want to get this head up to a good starting point. So I'd say lower to mid tension. And then that gives us some scope to tune up or tune back down, and really gives us the chance to really explore the sonic possibilities of these heads, because it's not one tension works and it only works on that particular drum. These drums have a very wide tuning range, and so do the heads, and it's just figuring out what works best. And you know, a lot of drummers are probably guilty of tensioning the heads right up to kind of high tension straight away, and they're often missing some of the real nice sounds that shell can produce.
I suppose too tight a tuning can choke the shell as well.
Exactly, it just puts extra tension, especially on thinner shells. So yeah, we'll use the process that we used on the snare side. So we'll take our counter hoop. Obviously we've given this a clean with our microfiber polish cloth.
Let's do that.
Just make sure that we're free of any debris. Second main point is make sure that badge is in line with this badge.
Otherwise it won't work.
It won't work. But in all honesty, that's just me, but it would put me off. So
if all drummers do it, our drums would all look fantastic.
Exactly. So yeah, we're just gonna locate this, make sure that the holes in the counter hoop are approximately lined up with the lug boxes there. And we're gonna add the tension rods back in, and we're just going to give a few turns with our hands again, just to make sure that the threads are located straight and we're not going to get any cross threading on that particular drum. And then we're going to use both hands just to ensure that we're tensioning equally on the drum. So just to mention about Evans drum heads in general, the shape of our drum heads is slightly different from other manufacturers on the market. We changed the profile of our head back in 2013. We came out with a new profile design which focused on the head making full contact with the bearing edge of the drum before we put any tension on the counter hoop. The reason for that is the collar on our old designed heads, so pre-2013, the collar, which is the rise of this part of the head here, was quite shallow, and that was reflective of older style drums with rounder bearing edges. Modern day drums have generally got much sharper bearing edges, and those bearing edges are more towards the edge of the shell, or the outer ply of the shell. The problem is if you've got a very shallow angle on the collar of the drum head doesn't sit flush against the bearing edge. Now, what we want with the drum head is we want full shell to drum head contact all the way around the drum head. If you don't have that full shell contact, before you start tuning and tensioning a head, you've got to kind of pull the head onto the shell, because you need that contact for the film to resonate fully. With the redesign, we basically widened or opened our collar up ever so slightly to work better with modern day sharp bearing edges. So level 360, although our recent logo update has lost the call out, this is our old logo with level 360. All of our drum heads still feature that level 360 profile of the drum head. So the real advantage of having full contact before you've put any sort of tension on the shell is it gives you a much wider tuning range. You can tune the heads much lower because you're not trying to pull the drum head onto the shell.
Okay.
The other thing is you can tune it, you can take it much higher because again, you're not choking out the drum head. You've got a very, very small surface area of film to shell contact. So level 360, although it's a very small design tweak, it makes a big difference to the ease of tuning drums. So we no longer need to seat heads. Often you'll see people kind of, doing CPR on the drums. And for drums that require the head to conform to these older style bearing edges, that technique works fine. But with us widening the collar of the drum head, you no longer need to do the stretching in of a drum head. So what it means is once you've placed the head and the hardware on the drum, we can pretty much get on with tuning.
Okay. So what was once an innovation is now complete standard across the
standard, yeah. So that is across all of our snare and tom heads and kick drum heads, with the exception of some of our crazier marching heads. So what we need to do now, same process as we did for the snare side head, is we just tension down all of these rods, finger tight, just to make sure that the rods are making contact and just pinching up against the counter hoop. Again, using opposites, but at this point you can just kind of spin the drum. We're not putting a huge amount of tension in the drum at this point, so we're not going to stretch it.
You just want to set it before we start putting the tension.
Just want to set it, because we're using muscle, we know that it feels around about the same tension. So it gives us a good fighting chance of getting the head equal just by counting the mechanical turns on the key.
Yeah.
So it's pretty simple stuff.
And you will get the calluses on your fingers soon.
Yeah.
They will come through.
They will. So again, choose your starting lug. It's the same repetitive process. Lug 1, and we're going to put a half turn on lug 1. We're going to move over to lug 2, half turn on there. And straight away, because of that contact with the bearing edge, you can hear it straight away kind of come to life. Half turn, half turn, half turn,
6.
half turn.
You noticed that I kept my finger on there and I lost myself halfway through, but
You've got 10. You've got 8, 10 tension rods, so 2 more than me to think about. Great. So we've done a half turn. I would take this up another half turn to get us into that medium tension.
Would you start the same lug you started on before? Or
Yeah, really just start at that same point, and that's just, it makes referencing where you started and ended a little bit easier. I mean, if you're really bad at remembering where you started and finished, you can always take a Sharpie and literally write the numbers across the side of the head. But that's only in extreme circumstances. Great. So yeah, we're pretty much set. Nothing is rattling on the drum. So we know everything's pretty good. And from there, we can really dive into the finer points of tuning. But in theory, this drum should sound playable. Like, just because we know we've referenced those points, we've put a turn to a turn and a half on the batter side. We know that the wires are set nicely. We know that the snare side's set nicely. So we could probably go cold into a gig and have an acceptable sound, but we don't want acceptable, we want good.
Yeah.
So the next part of this process is just dialing in your sound. And again, there's no right or wrong.
This could be right for you.
Exactly, that could be perfect right out of the box, but we need to hit it, listen to it, reference it, and figure out if there's anything going on with the snare. Are the wires buzzing too much? Are we getting funny overtones on the head? And we need to figure out how do we troubleshoot and how do we fix any of those problems. And often the main problem for drummers is finding the kind of the source of the cause of the sound you don't like. So usually it will be one of the tension rods will be slightly tighter than the other, but because we've mechanically tuned everything, you know, the same amount of turns, we should have a pretty consistent and a pretty equal tensioned head, top and bottom.
Great. And what you were saying about diagnosing problems goes back to the dismantling your snare drum and having a look at the inner workings, which make diagnosing these problems 10 times easier.
Exactly. So, you know, this stage is kind of well, we've troubleshooted one stage when we disassemble the drum. Next step is we'll get it on a stand, we'll listen to it, and we'll decide personally whether you want it higher tension, lower tension, or it might work fine.
If you found this video useful and you can see yourself using these tips on your snare drum, then please like and subscribe to the Gift Music Drums YouTube channel. I've been Myles, and this has been Ben from Evans. Thank you for watching.